Hi everybody, I'm here with your astrology for the month of July 2025. Again, we have a giant headline for the month of July, and that is Uranus is moving into the sign of Gemini. So lots going on this month. Again, unprecedented times. I know it's like I really hate that phrase, but yes, we do live in unprecedented times. So we have Uranus moving into sign Gemini as our big headline, but we also have some planets going retrograde. We have a Mercury retrograde this month, and then of course we always have a full moon and a new moon. But I'm going to talk about all of them in order for the month. If you like this, if you are one of the people that love the astrology videos, I do have a free newsletter on my website where I have all the astrology headlines, basically all what I'm talking about here, but you at least have it in your inbox where you can look at them. I also do an astrology blog as well. Links are down below in the bio. And on my Patreon at the $5 level, at the lowest level, I do have an astrology forecast for the week in detail, and I have tarot scopes as well. So if you like that stuff, you can all check that out there. But let's get to what's going on for the month of July. So I'm going to go in order. So Friday, July 4th, so on Independence Day, happy Independence Day to my American friends. We do have two things going on. We have Venus changing into the sign of Gemini, and we have Neptune going retrograde on this day. So Venus changes signs about every 4 weeks or so. She's going from Taurus into Gemini. Venus is love and beauty. It's how we like to be romanced. It's what we find aesthetically pleasing. It also has to do with creativity as well. And she's going from Taurus, which is one of her home signs, which she loves, which is all about like the earth and nature and beauty and luxury and pleasure, into Gemini. And Gemini is different tone, right? Like Gemini is all about the mind. Gemini is about learning. It's about ideas. Gemini is about talking and communicating, and also about laughter and joy too. Like Gemini is definitely a humorous sign. So when Venus moves into Gemini, we want our minds to be romanced. We want good conversation. We want someone to make us laugh. We want someone who brings that smile to our face. It's also, a time where Venus in Gemini, we want to share ideas with others. So it's not just in romance, but with friends, we're sharing ideas. Great time to be social, very social butterfly type energy. Venus in Gemini, when it comes to aesthetics, we tend to want things that are a little more trendy and new and novel, not necessarily classic or retro. We want things that are kind of new and different. You may find that this is kind of like summer trends come out, in the media and things like that. So Venus in Gemini, it has that kind of like fun type vibe. So we definitely want to go out and have some fun over the next 4 weeks with our friends, have some fun dates, do some fun things over the next while. Now, we also have on this day Neptune going retrograde at 2 degrees of Aries. So Neptune recently entered into the sign of Aries. He is going to be going retrograde till December 10th. And he is going to retrograde back into Pisces in the fall. So right now we're having kind of a preview of where Neptune's going to go, when he goes back into Aries in 2026, early 2026. And he's going to be there for the next 14 years. So a long time. So we're having a little preview. This is kind of like the trailer leading up to, what's going to happen next year. Now, Neptune is our dreams. It's the collective subconscious. So the moon is our personal subconscious. Neptune's the collective subconscious. It's what we collectively dream about and idealize. And it's about fantasy too. So, sometimes those dreams aren't very grounded in reality. Neptune is imagination, but it can also be things like drugs and alcohol, addiction, and has obviously connotations with the ocean. So Venus going retrograde, when Venus goes retrograde, unless you have a bunch of planets in the early degrees of Aries or planets around 2 degrees anywhere in the zodiac, you're probably not going to feel this on a personal level, but you might see it in the world because the outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, move so slowly. They tend to be more generational type planets. They influence generations and eras rather than individuals so much. So, when Neptune stations, which means it stops to go either retrograde or direct, meaning forward, it tends to intensify the energy of that planet when it's stops. So Neptune is intensified. The themes of Neptune are intensified around this time. So early July, we might see things around the ocean, disputes around the ocean or accidents. There may also be earthquakes are unfortunately also associated with Neptune. So we may see earthquakes, volcanoes, that kind of thing. I'm not saying for sure, but just it is a thing that's sort of correlated with that. Neptune as well going retrograde, we may see issues around drugs or fantasy, or like people that are involved with like spiritual cults, like things like that, where there's this element of illusion and fantasy going on. Also, if you hear something in the news that seems a little shady, or like you're like, well, that doesn't sound quite right, we're probably not getting the whole story, because Neptune also has this element of illusion to it. So watch for those kind of things in the news around July 4th. Now, next is our big headline. So on Monday, July 7th, we have Uranus moving into the sign of Gemini. So Uranus spends about 8 years in a sign. He's been in Taurus since 2018. Now, he will as well retrograde back into Taurus for a bit in the fall. But for now, he's moving forward into Gemini. And the reason that this one is kind of a big headline is anytime an outer planet changes sign, it doesn't happen very often, it's a big headline. But Uranus in Gemini is an interesting one. And I don't want to alarm people or anything, but there is a correlation between Uranus being in Gemini and the United States being at war. Because the last time Uranus was in Gemini was World War II. The time before that was the Civil War, and the time before that was the Revolutionary War. So there is this pattern of the US having some kind of conflict during the time that Uranus is in Gemini. And part of this is the chart for the United States. It's called the Sibley chart. The chart for the Declaration of Independence, which a lot of people use as the chart for the United States. Gemini is the seventh house, the descendant, which has to do with your country's relationships with others. And so when Uranus goes there, Uranus is chaos, Uranus is disruption. It can also be inspiration as well. It's not all bad. It's also has to do with technology too, but it's chaos and sudden changes and things that come out of the blue. And so it's going to the seventh house of partnerships and other countries, but also, when it's internal as well, is the union divided? You think about the Civil War, right? And Gemini is too. It's like divisions. So we'll see. I sincerely hope that this pattern does not continue, but based on kind of what's going on in the news, it's hard not to be like, oh, is this going to happen again, right? And so what also concerns me is that there aren't just echoes of the Civil War and the Revolutionary War in Uranus and Gemini. Neptune is in Aries, and Neptune was last in Aries during the Civil War. And Pluto is in Aquarius, and Pluto was last in Aquarius during the Revolutionary War. So people have speculated for a long time, is Uranus and Gemini, in the 2020s, going to be the US at war with other nations or with itself? And I unfortunately think the answer might be both. Now, does this mean all out war? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? It's hard to predict what's going to happen years down the road, right? Because remember, Uranus is in this sign for 8 years. And I don't want people to be paranoid or anything. It could be internal conflict. It could be more of what we're seeing right now with sort of these culture wars, or more of these trade wars, or could it even be internet stuff, attacks going on. So it doesn't mean bombs are going to be raining down, right, necessarily. It just means that there is some kind of conflict that's coming up. What that conflict looks like, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it is concerning on that level. The good news is that for the United States is that after Uranus has been in Gemini, the States has often reinvented itself. If you think of the Revolutionary War, obviously America became a country. After the Civil War, there was the whole restoration and things. And then after World War II, there was a renewing, America became sort of the bigger power player in the world. So there's this sense of renewal, and America sort of renews itself after this, or in the later phases of that Uranus and Gemini. So, it's sort of things have to get worse before they get better. I just, wish it didn't have to be that way. But we'll see what happens. Now, Uranus and Gemini, the United States is not the whole world, but I thought I would mention it because, a lot of you here are from the United States, and also, it's an important part of the world. The whole world is not the United States, obviously. themes of Uranus and Gemini are changes, because Uranus brings changes and it brings new technology, and Gemini rules things like travel, communication, and education. And so last time that Uranus was in Gemini, and a lot of this unfortunately is because of war. We often get new technologies or advancements in technology because of war. There's things like television, in the 40s came out and, became something that was, really changed the way we communicate, the way we're entertained, the way we're informed. Cars, already were invented, of course, but they became more accessible to people after that. They became more accessible after World War II and more affordable. So we had more roads built. We sort of had the suburbs as well became more of a thing. So things like that with transportation. The Civil War, after the Civil War, you sort of had railways being built, trains, transportation, especially short-term transportation, Gemini tends to rule. So domestic transportation became more accessible. So themes like that. So we may see some technological changes or advancements in transportation. Already we're seeing things like drones. They might become more of a thing. Self-driving cars, not a fan of self-driving car, let me tell you, but that might become more of a thing. So we'll have to see where that goes. Also, communication. So, who knows, especially with AI, what's going to happen with communication. I feel like by the end of the Uranus in Gemini, like social media, our phones, all that will be very different, I think, after that, because it rules communication, rules transportation, education too. It's interesting that those time periods also are associated with educational reform. After World War II, you had things like education becoming more standardized. You had things in Britain like, school lunches and things to make sure children were eating. You had all these sort of reforms going on in different parts of the world to the education system. And the same thing happened back in the 1860s, where you started to have standardized textbooks. There was the invention of things called common schools, which meant like they wanted children in general to go to school. There was also more educational opportunities opening up for women a little bit. So there may be some changes going on with education. Gemini also rules neighborhoods as well. So we may see changes to neighborhoods. Like, for example, in the 40s, we had like the suburbs became important. In the 1860s, you started to have like, it had been going on for a while. There was like, during the time of the American Revolution and the French Revolution and all that, we also had the Industrial Revolution going on and people moving into the cities. And then the 1860s, especially in North America, you had a lot of people moving out west. Say people, we know what we mean. We European settlers, right? There's people already living there, like we know. But there was this sort of move to expand and to go out into the West, also into Australia, things like that. So it often changes our neighborhoods. And what I wonder about for the next while is, are we going to see the rise more of things like 15-minute cities? This idea that you should be able to get anywhere within 15 minutes to meet all your needs. Or are we going to see neighborhoods change in some way, and in some way that we haven't expected? So those are some of the themes that I'm expecting to see over the next 8 years. Again, we're going to have a little trailer, a little preview of Uranus in Gemini into the fall, and then he'll retrograde back into Taurus for a bit before he goes there permanently in the spring of 26. So it's kind of a preview, but that is the big headline for July. Next, after that, we have on Thursday, July 10th, we have a full moon. There's a full moon every month. This one is at 18 degrees of Capricorn. So full moons are always when the moon and the sun are in opposite signs. So right now the sun is in Cancer, so the full moon will be in Capricorn, the opposite sign. This, I think, is going to be a very energized full moon. It has a nice trine with Mars, so we really want to get things done. It's a very ambitious moon. The sun in Cancer, we want to kind of relax and be at home and enjoy the summer. And I think that Capricorn full moon is going to say, okay, but you still got to accomplish some things. What do you want to do, right? So it's got some energizing tones to it, this full moon. Then on Saturday, July 12th, we have Saturn going retrograde at 1 degree of Aries. So Saturn's going retrograde. He'll be retrograde until November 27th. He will retrograde back into Pisces in the fall. And so Saturn in Aries is that energy of we want to move forward, but we feel stopped. This is a very like old versus young type energy, like the old establishment versus the young. Also, it's very much or like old people trying to be young, or trying to be like hip hey, I'm hip and cool, and it just comes off as kind of sort of awkward. Saturn in Aries also can be frustrations and restrictions that, you know, are expressed through violence as well, because Aries is a sign that has to do with war, has to do with aggression, and we can take action, but sometimes it tips over to something that is, you know, more violent. But that Saturn is, you know, because it's stationing, it does get amplified. If you have planets around 1 degree of Aries, again, early degrees of Aries, and you have or you have planets at 1 degree other signs, you might feel this more. You might feel stuck. You might feel like you're restricted in some way. You're slowed down in some way. So there's restrictions. Saturn in Aries can also be restrictions on freedoms. Now, because he's going retrograde, there's going to be a review of those things. People are going to be looking at the restrictions. People are going to be looking at like what's stopping us from moving forward. How are we being, you know, restricted in some way? So in that way, it's good. We're going to be reviewing those things. Thursday, July 17th, we have our Mercury retrograde starting. This is going to go on until August 11th. It goes from 15 degrees of Leo to 4 degrees of Leo. So if you have planets or points in your chart in the sign of Leo, you're probably going to feel this retrograde more than others. Mercury retrogrades, they happen 3 times a year. They're nothing to freak out about. But, you know, just make sure you're making extra time if you're traveling, giving yourself that extra time. Make sure that you are... what's the words I would say? You are communicating clearly with others. You're not miscommunicating. If you hear something that sounds weird, ask for clarification. You know, give yourself extra time for things, and also be patient with others. I find Mercury retrogrades in Leo tend to be miscommunications over dramatics, right? Mercury in Leo, and I say this as someone with Mercury in Leo, can be a little dramatic, right? We like to express ourselves. It's good and creative, but it can also be a little bit of drama. And so there may be a little drama going on. You know, give people a little bit of leeway, a little break. Also give yourself a bit of a break as well. Mercury retrogrades are good for reviewing things. So if there's an old creative project that you haven't touched in a while, it's a good time to take a look at it, good time to edit things. So it has its benefits as well. Also, you might run into an old friend from your childhood too, because Leo is about childhood too. So that's the Mercury retrograde. Then on Tuesday, July 22nd, we have the sun moving into the sign of Leo, as it does this time of year every year. We go from Cancer season, which is a little more laid back, relaxed, sit on the beach, be at home, to Mercury, to sun in Leo is like, hey, let's get out there, let's enjoy the summer while we can. It's going to beach, but not so much to like sit in the shade. It's more like to show off your new bikini kind of energy. Sun in Leo is very like, hey, look at me. It's great for going out and partying and having fun, or for creativity. Also for taking the lead on something too. It's a time to let yourself shine. So lots of shiny energy there. We then have a new moon on Thursday, July 24th. New moons are when the sun and moon are in the same sign. And so this is going to be at 2 degrees of Leo, so very early in Leo. This one's an interesting one. It has some supportive aspects in that it is sextile with Uranus, who just moved into Gemini, and trining. Trines are supportive with both Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So it's working with a bunch of these outer planets. So this, you know, when new moons are good times for setting goals. And in Leo, it's a good time to set goals around things like creativity. It's a very creative sign, taking the lead on something, anything to do with fun, like a hobby, an adventure of some kind, or self-expression, letting yourself shine. And it's saying to like give yourself opportunities to do things differently, you know, take opportunities to do something you maybe haven't done before. Also, like find structures so you can like put that into your routine, and to work on your dreams. So it's got a lot of supportive energy. It does have an opposition with Pluto though. And so oppositions are when things in the outer world sort of trigger tension or oppose us in some way. And that Pluto in Aries is sort of the collective. And so it's like we have these dreams, we have these ambitions of what we want to do, but we feel like the outer world, like, is it safe? Is it safe to do these things? Can I express myself in a world that's gone crazy, basically? So it has that kind of energy. It also has a speaking truth to power kind of energy. So this is very interesting, I think, new moon coming up on July 24th. Then on July 30th, we have 2 other headlines. So Wednesday, July 30th, we have Chiron going retrograde at 27 degrees of Aries. This is going to go on until January 2nd of 2026. It's going back to 22 degrees of Aries. So Chiron's, I think he's a dwarf planet, but he's been used more in modern astrology. I definitely use Chiron. Chiron's the wounds we have. It's the wounded healer. So it's the wounds we have. We all have them, but how we use them to help ourselves and help others. And so when it's retrograde, it's asking us to reflect on things. It's asking us to reflect on the past, reflect on what we've learned. Particularly Aries has to do with self-expression, how we may have felt wounded in our self-expression, right? So we're going to be looking at those things. And then the last one we have is on Wednesday, July 30th. We have Venus changing signs again into Cancer. She's been in Gemini. Now she's going into Cancer. Venus in Cancer is, Venus in Cancer, we want to be nurtured. Venus, again, love and beauty. And so we go away from kind of wanting to be chatty and social butterfly and talk to wanting to be at home, be nurtured and nurture others. Maybe we want to cozy up with the person we love, watch a movie, want to bake, maybe we want to just sit at home in the shade and enjoy a drink. Like, it's very this nurturing kind of energy and have that strong emotional bond and emotional connection. And when it comes to aesthetics, we tend to be like a little bit more nostalgic. So we don't want something trendy. We want something that makes us think of something retro or something traditional or something that's just like more sort of bohemian and flowy. It definitely has a more feminine, ethereal, even witchy kind of vibe to it. So those are the headlines for the month of July of 2025. Let me know what your thoughts are. I don't want to freak people out with the Uranus and Gemini, but I do want to tell people that this is a thing, and it is a thing that astrologers are looking at. So, we'll see kind of where this goes. I mean, we'll see if this pattern continues. That's a thing with astrology. We're looking at patterns that repeat themselves, right? So we'll have to take a look at that. But I'm sending you, wherever you are in the world, I'm sending you so much love, and I'm hoping for a good month of July. Let's just hope that, pray for peace in the world and for human rights and, for all of those things, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that's, really not good right now. And so I'm just sending you, wherever you are in the world, lots of love, hoping for peace, hoping for, prosperity, human rights, healing of the planet, all that kind of stuff. And as always, if you want to check out my linkies below, you can check it out. Thank you to my patrons. You guys are amazing. I wouldn't be here without you. And as always, peace and love and rock.